Hey everybody, welcome on into, yes, this is the ClayShare studio. We are in the middle of insulating the space, so this is a work in progress, much like all of our pottery projects, right? So we're going to be tonight doing a tutorial on throwing basics, and I'm just going to go over some of the basic things for throwing. And if you want a more formal class, I do have an intro to wheel throwing class that is free on clayshare.com, or you can download the ClayShare app and watch it there. Either way. And in that class, I break things down into really small, easy to follow steps. And there's no live discussion, so if you don't like the chit chat and back and forth that live broadcasts give, you might like those classes a little more. In addition to the intro to wheel throwing, I have a few dozen other wheel throwing classes. We also have about 8 or 10 classes from Kevin Kowalski on wheel throwing, and he's pretty awesome. And he's got a really great one that you might like this time of year because he teaches you how to throw Christmas trees. So that's what we have going on. And we're also going to be giving away some of Clayscape's pottery glazes. We're going to give away a 6-pack. And I don't know if you can see the glazes I've got off to the side here, but I thought I'd show some of them to you all to give you just an idea of a tiny bit of what they have for glazes, because they have a lot of them. They carry my line of glazes that I developed, but they also have their own in-house glazes. So I thought I'd just share a few. This is my Chun blue with my spearmint on the rim. So I don't know how great the camera is on picking that up, but that's a good one. This is their shadow blue, which is one of their celadons. So if you're looking for a glaze that'll show off texture, this. And if you dip my Oribe on top of it, you get this. So my Oribe is a translucent green. It's very similar to a celadon, so if you have texture, that's a great one as well. And so the prize we're giving away, and this is my holiday pattern. You want to go to camera 2? To show these glazes. This is my holiday pattern with the Oribe glaze, which is very seasonal. It's rather perfect, I think, for this time of year. And that's Clayscape's cream on the rim, which kind of goes blue when you put it on the Oribe. So you can, all you folks can see that. A few more I'll go through quickly, and then we'll make the pots. But we're giving away the 6 glazes, and to enter all of our giveaways, all you do is go to clayshare.com, sign up for our emails, and you're entered. If you are a premium member of ClayShare, you're automatically entered. You don't have to do anything at all. You get to choose the 6 glazes you get. This is my cobblestone with my spearmint. I say my in front of the glazes that are mine that I developed. The ones that are not mine, I just say the name, just to specify so that there's no... There is a Mako product called Cobblestone. My glaze is nothing like that. Just to be clear, this is a glaze that is the color of cobblestones, but it doesn't give you a cobblestone effect. And then I have this amazing cranberry, so yummy, right here. If you're looking for seasonal glazes, Oribe, cranberry, you know, those will get you these really nice traditional reds and greens. If you're looking for a bright fire engine red, I would check out Clayscape's Red Hook. That's a great one. This is Clayscape's Cream on Laguna 60, which is a speckled clay, which is a really nice, also good for bakeware clay. A few more, and then we'll get to it, everybody. Right here is their amber celadon, Clayscape's amber celadon with cream on the rim. We have a thing with Clayscape's cream. Cream goes with everything, right? Or everything looks good with cream on top, however you want to say it. So this is the shadow blue with cream. Look at that. Camera doesn't know what to do. It's so amazing. It fools the camera. I love the drips on this. We're getting there. Oh, let me show you this one too. Yeah, you want to see that. Hold on. This is a casserole dish with the Clayscapes 60. I mean, with the Laguna 60, and the glazes are my Lake Blue and Spearmint. This is the dip and pour version. See that yummy toasty clay? It's so good. What else do I got? And that's pretty much it. Everything else is redundant. But if you check out clayscapespottery.com, you can look at all their glazes and see them all. There's so many things. So what am I cooking in with these? And where can you get a startup set at? What am I cooking? If you're cooking the casserole dishes, you can cook anything you want in homemade casserole dishes. As far as pottery equipment, well, Clayscape's Pottery has got everything you need to get started. There's also lots of other places that sell pottery equipment if that's what you're looking for. Bailey Pottery would be one of my go-tos. Sheffield Pottery. Has a lot of pottery equipment, Clay King, the ceramic shop, lots of places. All right, so we're gonna go get this going this evening. All right, so for throwing at the wheel, I will go back to the main camera so I can talk to you all, and we can talk about when you're throwing, you know, you ideally have a wheel because you're gonna be working. Now, I did a few weeks ago a tutorial with the Speedball Artista wheel, which is a really great portable wheel. And you might ask, why am I not using that tonight? Well, I did just use that and do a tutorial with that, but I thought it would be good to move back to my Bailey. This is my Bailey Pro XL wheel. And what I love about this wheel is you might see it has this enclosed splash pan. So it's one big piece with a drain hole in the front. And this piece that comes out over here on the side, so you can just scoop your trimmings out the side into a bucket. And I really love the ease of cleanup with this because you just wipe it out and go. You don't have to remove a splash pan. And it's one of the things I love about this wheel. So we're going to use this tonight, and we'll talk about wheels and we'll talk about body posture, which is really, really important. You know, when you're sitting at the wheel, the thing you want to always be conscious of, you want to think about keeping your back straight. You don't ever want to hunch like this. Don't round your shoulders. Don't round your back over. You want to think about keeping a strong core. You want to think about keeping your abs tight. You want to think about having your back nice and straight. How high you sit to the wheel makes a big difference. If you are sitting so low that your knees are up here, like this, that's not what you want. You don't want your knees up by your ears. You want to have your knees either at a nice angle, 90-degree angle going down, or you want to have a slight, I like to have a little more of an angle. I sit up kind of high. I actually have my feet propped up on things so that I don't have to worry about being hunched. You know, the higher you sit, the less hunched you're going to be when you're throwing. So that's really important. Another thing to keep in mind is, for me, this is true and would be true for most ladies and probably most men, is where your hip bones are is about the same level as you want your wheel height. So when you sit down, my hip bones are about here, my wheel head is here, right? So you want that, and also so that when you work, you can work comfortably with your elbows in for a nice stable form, and you can support yourself this way if you need to, and so that your hands can reach everything nicely, and so you're not stretching, right? You don't want to stretch, but you don't want to be hunched in. So think about your posture. That's really important when you're throwing. And, you know, if you need to get, while you're working, get up every time you throw a pot, do some stretches, walk around, limber up, because you don't want to hurt your back, you know. You don't want to destroy your back when you're just starting out. If you have back problems, is it okay to raise your wheel? I would check with your doctor if you have back problems that are really severe and you see a doctor for them and ask their suggestions. You know, I met with a physical therapist for physical therapy over many sessions, and she helped me to get better hand posturing and better body posturing for working at the wheel, just so that I can work longer and be stronger and smarter while I work, and that's really important. So the way I sit kind of rigid, but, you know, it's the way you need to sit to keep your body strong. Now, another option is you could stand and throw, which is what I did at that Artista wheel a few weeks ago. So if you really want to not worry about sitting, you can stand, put the wheel up, and then it's much better for your back. It's a little awkward at first, but once you get used to it, you'll be doing it like it's the way you've thrown your whole life. Especially if you're just starting out, you would have no difference, right? So I've got some bats here. You know, you can throw directly on your wheel head if you want to. When I started out, I did. And then you cut your pots off and you just sit them on a board to the side. But over the years, I really like using bats because then I never have to touch the pots after they're thrown, so I don't risk distorting them or anything. And also, I don't really love the feel of a metal wheel head on my hands. You know, it is more abrasive than wood, so I would prefer to use bats. But, you know, there are people out there that are die-hard wheel throwers on a metal wheel head, and that's all they're going to use. And if that's the case, that's what you do. It's fine. You do what works for you. This is a little homemade gripper pad that I did a little free tutorial on how to make. All you do is cut like some of that shelf liner up. and put some holes in it so it lines up with your bat pins. And you put it between your bat and the wheel head, because some of you might have noticed bats sometimes wobble. And then you get this bump, 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 bump. And we don't want that. So to prevent that, I go ahead and use my bat pad, gripper pad. All right, I think I put that on upside down. I did. Hey, everybody. From Rocks Beach, Florida. Ooh, your weather must be nice. New Hampshire, your weather's the same as mine, right? And New Zealand. So we're heading into autumn, or we're actually firmly in autumn. Actually, we're heading into winter because 25 is our low tonight. Going to be 25 degrees. Yeah, I think so. That's what I saw. Something like that. So how high should your wheel be if you stand to throw? So when we're sitting, we have it at our hip bone height, right? But when we're standing, you need to have it so that you can grasp whatever you have on your wheel comfortably. So I like to have it around belly button height, but what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to set up your wheel standing at it and see what feels right for you. And because everybody is completely different with the way that they throw and the way they work. All right, so we're thanking my mom for my Pottery studio shelving. Thanks, Mom. It's just she brought me a step ladder because I didn't have one. Not for the studio, but I appropriated it and now it's in the studio. Nova Scotia's in the house. Salem, Missouri is here. Oh, Queensland's here. People from everywhere. Aloha from Hawaii. And hello from Germany. You hate your metal wheel. Your husband is making you wooden bats. You will love it, Catherine. I really hate the feel of metal. I have a metal allergy. So for me, when I throw on metal wheels for a long time, it's not just the abrasiveness. It causes irritation because it's metal. So for me, it's not great. All right, so I have 4 balls of clay that I wedged kind of quickly. I didn't do, when you get your clay out of the bag, it's already de-aired. You don't have to do much to it. You just kind of smack it around a bit, wedge it a few times, and then it's good to go. You don't really have to de-air it because they've already done that work for you. So these balls of clay weigh 1.63 pounds because I weighed them on my digital scale, and that's why I know what they weigh. And so we're just going to do some throwing. I don't have anything in particular in mind, but we'll see. So when throwing on a bat, do you undercut? I will wire off at the end so that you just lift it off. Yeah, do not let your pots dry on a bat. Did I throw that plate away? I let one of my plates dry on a bat a few weeks ago. We made leaf plates on the Artista wheel, as a matter of fact. And I left the plate on the bat as an experiment without wiring it off. And guess what? It cracked like crazy. So I always wire everything off. All right, 1.63 pounds of Laguna B-Mix 5 is the clay we've got going here. And you just start by throwing it into the center. Now, we call this throwing on the wheel here in the U.S. Where you are, you might call it turning. You might have another term for it. Why we call it throwing, I assume it's because you first throw it down onto the wheel head, onto your bat or your wheel head. I guess that's why we do it. You can go to camera 2. So once you get that on there, you're going to turn your wheel on. Do not turn your wheel on before that, because what happens is you'll sit down and you'll step on your pedal and you'll send your stuff flying, or if your bat isn't already attached, it's just sitting on there, that'll go flying. So I always wait to turn my wheel on until I've actually got the clay on the wheel. Tumblers! Tumblers! Still not seeing. Lisa, I see you though. I see you. Ah, in France, bonjour. So 1.6 pounds of clay is a lot for a tumbler. I would make my tumblers more about a pound and a quarter. I mean, we can tear some of this clay off, or we can make the world's we can make giant tumblers. Giant. I saw everybody like, ooh, giant tumblers. All right, so I like to take the heels of my palms and I just smack it in. I call this smacking on center. And you just smack it in. It's kind of step 1 to get it towards center, and it seats the clay on the wheel head. You just smack it in. You make a little mountain. This would be a volcanic mountain that has not yet erupted, if you're going to classify it, right? So you understood the pulling up or down was called throwing. Oh, so that's what you've used, the pulling up is the throwing and compressing. So I'm not sure. I would love to get clarification on it, like the historical reason why we call it that. Sheboygan's in the house. Hi, Barbara. All right, so I like to throw with a lot of water. This is possibly why I love this big, huge one-piece splash pan wheel design as well, because all my water just drains down into that hole. It doesn't fill up in my splash pan, and I don't have to sit there and worry about it overflowing. So you get your clay wet, and so I throw a way that I've developed over my many years of throwing pottery, but when I teach, I try to teach a little differently because I want to get you all started at the same level, at the same place. So we're going to compress the clay in. And so we're going to use the bottom half of our palms and our fingertips, and we're going to compress it in as we pull it up. So this is also called coning up. So we're pressing in and pulling up. And if you look at your hands, you'll see where most of the slip is, right? So we got an L here on my right hand, and it's just mostly across the entirety of my left hand. And get it wet again. And now we're going to press down. So we coned up, and then we're going to press it down. And you see how I have the cone of clay spinning in my palm? I'm going to press down with my left hand. I'm going to use my right hand to support it, also to give me more strength and stability. And we're just going to press this all down. Now you'll find going faster is better when you're throwing and centering. I should say when you're centering. And so we're going to do that same process a few times. This will take you the longest if you're starting out making pottery. Learning how to center takes the longest. And it's really a bummer that centering is the hardest part of throwing because it's what puts people off. It took me to get to center really well about a couple weeks of throwing every day, all day, to get it down. And even then, even sometimes now, I have days where centering is meh. So what I'm going to show you now is this is how I cone up, and then this is how I compress down. So throwing had to do when you threw a stick to spin the wheel. Maybe. So a stick was the way that the wheel was turned, right? And so once you get your clay centered, and if you're just starting, I always tell my students, please don't get hung up on being perfectly centered. You know, it's already frustrating enough, everything else with learning pottery. Please don't get hung up on that. If you've got it pretty close to centered, just go with it and make something. Will it be perfect? No, but it wouldn't have been perfect even if you got it perfectly centered. I'm just promising you that. So don't get hung up on that need to make it perfectly centered. Please make yourself something, make a bowl, make anything. Get something out so you have a sense of accomplishment, because that's what keeps us going forward. We need to have a reward. There's no reward, why do it? If you're spending hours just lumps of clay on the wheel and getting nothing at the end of your time, you're not going to want to keep doing this. So please make yourself something, even if it's terrible. At least you have something you can glaze and something you can complete. Why do some potters compress straight down like me and some push away down? You know what it is? It's all just like the way we all walk differently and the way we all cook differently or chop vegetables differently. It's just a technique that we've all developed, and everybody does it differently. There's not a right way, and I really, really, really want to stress that for you all. Don't think that the way you do it is wrong. If you're getting results at the end, then you're doing it correctly. And that's how I feel. So we're going to find the center, so we're going to open this up. So I just use my thumb. I let my thumb roll around, and then I just press down. And we're going till we are about a little more than 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. If you want a really tall foot, you have to leave more clay at the bottom. So maybe you want a big foot, so you leave 3/8 of an inch. Maybe you want a huge foot, so you leave 1/2 an inch of clay. But make sure you trim it away or you could get cracking. So once you've found the bottom, we're going to open it up. And so we're going to just pull back. And I'm just using my fingers and I'm pulling back like this. And what will happen sometimes if you go too fast, you can knock it off center. So if you knock your pot off center, don't worry about it, just keep going with it. So we're going to compress our bottom now. Per Google, the Old English word throwing means to turn or twist. Okay, so there we have it. Throwing means to turn or twist. And this is turning, right? Spinning. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So we compress our bottom. I think we're going to do a bowl. And then if you want tumbler, I'll do that next. I'll change the clay. It's a handmade item, so it isn't going to be perfect. Exactly. It's supposed to make you happy. That's the whole point, you know, with making pottery, is it's supposed to be something you enjoy doing. If you are not enjoying making pottery, please find something else. Not that I don't want everybody making pottery, because I do, but I certainly don't want people to be miserable out there doing it and suffering through it. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we are going to pull the wall. And so we slow the wheel down and we're just pulling up. And I'm pinching with the clay gently on the inside and the outside. Fairly even pressure on both sides. I'm going to do that again. And I throw with a sponge for support and also because I like the really smooth wall it gives me. And after every pull or two, you want to make sure you compress that rim at the top. If you ever get an uneven, undulating rim, or if your clay starts to kind of wobble on you, it could be because you're not compressing. Do I compress the base with the sponge? I don't. No, I use my fingers to compress the base. And then what I will often do is take the sponge and go in and wipe out anything. But I don't usually use the sponge to compress it. But you could. Another trick is if you have a metal rib or if you have one of these fabulous Cheryl mud tools or any rubber rib, this is a silicone rib, you can compress with this. And I really like to use these on bowls, and we'll do that where we throw down on the inside with the bowl. Throwing a foot. Christine, I don't have a, like, do you want me just to throw a base for a foot, like a pedestal foot? Because I can do that. If you mean putting a coil on a pot that's already set up that you need to throw it on the bottom of a pot, I don't have anything that's stiff enough that I could do that to without destroying it. But if you want me to throw a pedestal piece, I could do that for you. All right, so we made a little bowl. So 1.6 pounds you think is going to make a huge bowl, and it's going to be a nice size cereal bowl when all is said and done and we shape it and everything. But you have to leave a lot of clay on the bottom to support those walls of this bowl. Also, because we're going to trim a lot away. And so that's something that you got to keep in mind. All right, let's start shaping this now. And I'm going to use a rib. You don't need to use a rib. I am a rib thrower. I love smooth surfaces most of the time. Sometimes I like to use, when I'm doing tea bowls, I like to put throw marks in there and really get in and have a good time with it. But this particular piece, just gonna pull it up. And I usually throw about 1/8 of an inch thick. So now let's do what I was talking about when I said I was going to throw down. Time to throw down. I'm just going to make sure I have my shape on the outside. The other thing that's fabulous about using ribs is it scrapes away all this slip that's building up on the surface. This slip holds moisture. And you know, clay only has a certain amount of time that we can work with it before it collapses on us because it becomes waterlogged and it becomes what we call exhausted. So if you get too much water in there and you don't remove that slip from the surface, your clay is going to collapse sooner than you want it to. And the reason I like to throw down on the inside is I can create this really lovely continuous curve on the inside of my pot. And I don't think you can see it at this point, but we'll be able to see it when it's trimmed. You can see it after it's trimmed. All right, so I am going to just take a little bit of the foot away that's on the back, but not a lot, because I don't really want to take away all that support that you need. Now, little bowls like this, you don't need as much support as you do if we're making bigger bowls. But this will be a really great cereal bowl when it's all said and done. Take a bit away. And if you have a tendency to make your bottoms or the bottom half of your pots a little thick, just trim it away when you're starting. Don't worry about that. Don't let that hold you back. Just gonna round over my rim a little more. So this pot will need to sit overnight, and then tomorrow I'll be able to trim it depending on where you are in the world and the humidity level of the studio and space you're working in. Some people sit these outside, they make them in the morning, and they can trim after lunch. It just depends where you are. Where I am, that's not going to happen. I need to wait until tomorrow to trim it. Can we use overhead for opening the next one? Yeah, we should. We should talk to that cameraman. We have to fire him if he can't do it right. All right, so I'm going to sit this bowl. Let's see, camera 2, so you can see the side of the bowl. And see the inside. I don't know if you can see that curve that I've got in there. Did you guys see how it has that really nice curve from throwing down? I've got all these pots in the way of my pots. What? All right. So this bat system I'm working with, I really, really love these because you have these inserts that you can just stick in there and you don't have to put a whole new bat in. It's just this little insert. Whenever you try to use a rib for shaping, you tend to gouge your clay. Julie, what are you using for a rib? You know, for me, I have found that if I use a metal rib, I gouge it almost every time. But if I use those silicone ribs, they really do a great job for shaping. And that red one is my favorite. Yeah, Skip, you're welcome. There is no right way at all to center. If people are telling you there is a right way, I think they're very limited because no two people do anything the same way. So how could throwing be the same way? Watch any 10 people on YouTube throw a pot, and we're all going to do it differently, right? So, all right, you want to see it from the overhead. Want to make a tumbler. I'm going to take a hunk of clay off this. Making this about a pound and a third, maybe a pound and a quarter. I mean, you could do the full 1.6 pounds, and I'm sorry, I don't know the conversion for that into kilograms, right? Isn't that what we'd need?
Say that again?
If we were convert it for people who don't use pounds for their measurements, weights.
Pounds per kilogram divided by...
Yeah, you want to do that math? Go for that. All right, you're going to do it on the overhead for everybody?
Yeah.
Talk about finger placement when you pull the walls insides versus outside. Sure, yeah. And it all has to do with what you're making and shaping too. So let's go ahead and get this going. Oh my goodness, Kevin's got his super source. Oh, he loves that. So I try not to take a lot of time in centering. You know, I don't want to get my clay too wet, but you know, sometimes it just doesn't want to center. I also check your wheel for being level. I don't think I checked my wheel. It's feeling not quite centered, but we're going with it. That's pretty good. It's pretty close. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. So we're finding the center at the top. I use my thumb to do that. And you just let your hand rest there. And then you can use your index finger, your middle finger, whatever you want to press down. And I am pressing my thumb down into the clay. And this helps widen that opening. And that way we can go down about as deep as we want to go. Now, I didn't do the test with a needle tool last time. I don't even have a needle tool at my wheel. So I don't know if I can show you how to use a needle tool to check your depth. But many of you have probably seen that, and I do teach that in my intro to wheel throwing class to check your depth. All right, so it's a tumbler. We want a flat bottom, not a rounded. So I had opened that up as if I was going to do a rounded, so I'm just going to go ahead and compress this bottom. So my way of throwing has changed too. Because I had carpal tunnel surgery on both my hands this year, back in March and April, I don't throw the same way as I used to. I am a little more careful in my hand movements because of that, but I mean, that shouldn't change anything for you guys. You have difficulty centering the very bottom of your ball of clay. So you could practice centering and just throwing little bits off the top, off the hump it's called, and that would help maybe you get better at centering. But you really just got to keep at it. Also, my clay, make sure your clay is not hard. Make sure your clay is soft enough to work with. If you're working with a really stiff, hard clay, you're going to struggle to center it. All right, we want to talk about hand positioning. So when you are pulling up, when we're pulling straight up for our first pull, you don't actually want to pull straight up. You actually want to angle inward and put a little more pressure on the outside than on the inside, especially when we're making things that are cylindrical, like tumblers or tall vases. But when we're making bowls, you can pull straight up, and what will happen is centrifugal force is going to widen that for you. But tumblers, you want to imagine there's a string hanging right here in the center, and you're actually pulling up towards that string, and you're going to apply even pressure inside and outside. So I'll do it without my sponge, which is asking a lot because I'm very dependent on my sponge, and pull it up and then compress. Let's do another one, but I'm going to use my sponge. And so we're pulling up, even pressure inside and out. We're just squeezing that clay. My inside fingers are just below my outside fingers. So if we look at how my hands are positioned here, I'll hold them out. Imagine this space right here is a pot. That's the wall of the pot. And so my hands are just like this, but the inside hands are just a little bit below my outside hands. And that's just for pulling straight up. So that's my hand placement. Other people will have different hand placements, and please don't get hung up on that. If you're working and it's going well, then don't worry about it. Bert loves the 3-camera shot, just so you. All right, so let's pull up another. Another pull. And so we do our thinning pulls to get our height first, because once we start shaping outwards, we're not going to be able to add any height. You just lose that. So you have to get all your height now and then shape it later. If you're a new thrower and starting an 8-week course on Friday, yay! Oh, Kimberly, great. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So when you're learning to throw, please be kind to yourself. Give yourself a lot of time for your learning curve, because it will take a long time for you to get things down. I've never met anybody who sat down at the wheel and threw a perfect pot their first time. It's just like anything. You have to learn the technique and build up skill. And some people pick it up quicker than others. It's true. So don't get discouraged if you see other people who started when you started and you feel they're ahead of you. Just keep working at your own pace and you will get there. So I was asked a few minutes ago about the material of this red rib. This is a silicone rib. And then I also have these really great wooden ribs. These ones happen to be made by a company called Dirty Girls, which I love their ribs. Kemper makes great ribs. Who else out there's got some good ribs? There's some good no-name ribs. Right here is a couple basic ribs. This is a Kemper. It comes in the Pottery toolkit, the basic one we all get when we're starting. And I like to use this because as long as I've been throwing, I always have a little, we call it an apron. I call it an apron. It's how I learned it. But you might call it something else. Some people call it a skirt of clay at the bottom. And so I just always take that away. Just like, nope. We don't need that. And now we can start to shape. And if you prefer wooden ribs over silicone or metal ribs, you know, MKM Tools makes a ton of really spectacular wooden ribs. All right, so you're making your tumbler, and, you know, if your shape is getting out of hand from you, meaning it's widening more than you want it to do, get the outside wet. And then you just compress it in, starting at about the middle, and then you work your way up. Don't be too aggressive though, because you can fold your clay. And just work it in. And that helps bring it back in just a little bit, because sometimes, even when we're really careful and we're throwing, we sometimes get too much outward flow. Oh, Colleen, I'm glad you got your pins. Yay! Oh, you're welcome. I can't wait to see what you do with them. It's been very exciting seeing everybody creating with the pins and all the new things that they're making. I love it. All right, I'm going to make a tumbler kind of like the one over there that's I'm not going to grab because I don't want to get it covered in clay. I'm going to come into the bottom, and I'm using the back side, the curved side of a wooden rib, and I'm just going to press that into the clay, and my hand is on the inside just gently supporting it so it doesn't push in too far. You don't want it to go too far. And then I'm pulling up. So I'm just resting my hand against the rib and slowly pulling them both up together. It's just about there. I just want a little bit. I don't want a lot. And then I'm just going to continue up, following that little bit of a curve we've got going. And then again here at the top, I'm just going to give it a slight outward curve. Just for thinking about use and how an outward flaring rim, slightly outward flaring rim, is much nicer to drink from than an inward flaring rim. So the shape looks pretty good. It's pretty basic. Let's do a little more refining. If you trim left-handed, should your wheel be spinning clockwise? And can you throw right-handed but trim left-handed? Okay, you can throw and trim any way you want. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. If you work one way and it works for you, you do that. You know, there are people out there who will tell you you have to trim, you know, going in one direction because you threw in the other direction, but I have found that none of that really is true. So I'm a right-handed person. My wheel is currently spinning counterclockwise. Left-handed people will be spinning clockwise for throwing, but I know left-handed people who've learned to spin going counterclockwise too, so learn to throw with it spinning counterclockwise. So it really just depends on what you're comfortable doing and where you live. Some places in the world, they actually only teach one direction, right? I have a friend who learned in Australia. Now, she told me this. I don't know for a fact, so all of you Australian folks out there, you'll have to forgive me if it's not correct. But she's a righty, and they only taught her one way. Or is she a lefty and they only taught her the right way? You guys will know. But she was telling me that they don't teach right or left-handed. They only have one direction, and that's it. That's the way you throw. So anybody who throws in Australia, let me know if you've heard that too. Adam's a lefty who throws counterclockwise, exactly. And thank you, Judy, for mentioning Adam Field. He's going to be coming on in January and doing a wheel throwing workshop with us. It's going to be a two-parter. We're getting all the details together. It's probably going to be in the first quarter of 2022. Haven't set dates yet, but I'll be getting all that information. And yet, Rich, I am still trying to figure out how to do a Zoom wheel throwing class, the boot camp. It's still in the works. Don't worry. That hasn't been sidelined at all. So this is a nice, like, ale cup shape that I'm making. Yeah, you hear him over there? He's like, ooh, ale cup, because he thinks he's going to get to have it. You're a lefty in New York, and you throw counterclockwise as well, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with where you learned and how comfortable you are working in that direction. This wheel goes both directions, so I've never tried throwing. Gosh, I've never tried throwing going clockwise. We will not do that tonight, but that could be entertaining, couldn't it? All right, so I just trimmed a little undercut here on my foot, and I'm not 100% happy with this one curve right here. So I'm going to go back in and just fix it. There we go. So I threw down on the curve, started here, and I compressed and threw it down a bit. Now this clay is going to shrink 12%, 11, 12%. So this looks huge, right? This looks like a ginormous tumbler, but it's not. It's going to just be a regular old cup. You're right-handed and you throw and trim clockwise. See? So there is no right, I don't believe there's a right and wrong way for the direction that you throw or trim. I think it's just whatever works for you, you know, what you're more comfortable doing. So if you're trying to throw one way and it's not working, switch it up and try another way and see if that works for you. All right, use this flathead screwdriver to get my inserts out. Some of these inserts will pop right out easy. Some are really snug. You might have noticed when I put it in, I had to like boop, boop, boop it in a bit because it was a little tight. So you've got another one. Oh wait, do you guys want to see that tumbler? I'm sorry. It's a very serviceable tumbler. It's not anything fancy at all. It's very much, I would call this a masculine piece. You know, if we were going to categorize pots, although I don't really believe in that at all, I would say it's very utilitarian and serviceable. When I was learning pottery, my professor would have loved this shape. This would have been right up his alley. That would have been like, a, ooh, yes, and let's glaze it black, just flat black. Or give it to you, maybe, we'll see. Christmas is coming. Christmas could happen. You could get a present. You throw counterclockwise in Australia, Catherine. Thank you. Yeah. So you have a hard time centering in a class you hadn't thrown for a few years. So frustrating. The teacher finally tried to show me the clay was too hard. No wonder. Patty, make sure your clay is soft. I don't know if I can show you. I buy B-Mix, and when I get it, what I do is I take my bag out of the box and I kind of drop it on all four sides, well actually 5 sides because the bottom 2, so all 4 sides in the bottom, and that helps to loosen it up a bit and keeps it from being too stiff. And then I will cut my sections off, and then I just do like wedge, wedge, done, that's it. And I don't know if I can convey how soft my clay is. You can see it's kind of sticky. I mean, it's so soft but it's not so soft that it's marshmallow fluff. So it's not sticky mush because it's not really sticking to my hands, but it's definitely soft. Okay, let's get another piece. What else you guys struggling with? What do you want me to do? I got 2 more lumps of clay. I can make some stuff for you. I teach at a community center, and the wheels can't change direction. Yes. Yeah, so that's true. Some places, the wheels do not change direction, so what you get is what you get. So you have to learn with what you have, right? And I don't know if that makes it harder or if it's just everybody starting out having to do it that one way, right? In that one direction. What are the dimensions of this piece here? I would need someone to grab a ruler, but I'm gonna guess it's about 2.5 inches by about 5 inches from 1.3. So it's funny, when I started making pots at the beginning, I was really picky about how much does it weigh, how wide is it, how tall is it, and now I'm just like, it's this big. I don't ever check anymore. But I mean, if you're doing functional wear and you're selling sets, people want them all to be about the same, right? So it's a good question to ask. Okay. So on the top, we are 3 3/4. At the bottom, we are just about, just under 3. Maybe we're a little bigger at the top. Let me see. We're 3 3/4, just 3 on the bottom. Yeah. And then for height-wise, we are exactly 5 inches tall. I said about 3 and 5, so I was pretty close. but so 3 on the bottom, 3 3/4 on the top, 5 inches tall with 1.3 pounds of clay, 1.25 pounds of clay approximately. And of course I'm going to trim that foot, and I'll trim not just the outside, but I'll trim the inside of the foot too to give a nice foot ring. So that'll give a good shape to that. You love B-mix. You don't have to worry about it being too hard. Yeah, B-mix is a dish or a low-walled bowl. We could do a low, let's do a low. We'll do a low-walled bowl, but it won't be too wide because I don't have the right bat. And also, I need more clay. So we're going to wedge. Can you wedge at your wheel? No, don't wedge at your wheel. Can't do it. No, don't do it. I'm totally kidding. I wouldn't do it every day and make a practice of it, but if you're at the wheel and you need to wedge something, by all means, you can do it. If you don't want to get up and walk to your wedging table. My wedging table is currently about 40 minutes south of here, so I'd have a bit of a walk. So I'm going to do it on my wheel. I still don't have a wedging table. My studio move is going to end up taking like 2 years. It's ridiculous, but it's all right. All right, low-walled piece, low-walled bowl. Smacking it on center. I always like teaching my evening classes with adults because this part right here is the most fun, because we'll have students come in, they're like, yes, I wait all week for this part. Because you just get to smack it as much as you want. Okay. Can you make a bowl square? Absolutely. Yeah, you can throw a round bowl and you can alter it. So you got a couple choices. I mean, hold on. If you can make a wheel-thrown pot look like, you knew this was coming if you asked me about shape, right? If you can make a wheel-thrown pot look like a kidney bean. I'm in camera 2? Where are we? Oh my goodness gracious. If you can make a wheel-thrown pot look like a kidney bean, you can make it look like square if you want to. So this one, we threw it without a bottom and added a bottom later. And I have a wheel-throwing class on making this lovely thing. But you can make a square one. I actually did make a square one in one of the classes. And you could make a square piece with a rounded bottom. So you could square the rim and leave the bottom rounded. Okay, let's go in there. Back to work. You're new to throwing B-mix, your bowls tend to be bottom heavy. That's very common when you're first starting with a soft clay like B-mix. Just trim away your excess to begin with, and eventually you will work your way up to having thinner bottoms. Bowls also need thicker bottoms when we're throwing them because they need that support. Plates or platters. Throwing plates requires about 5 pounds of clay, and I didn't prepare for that tonight. I do have a class on throwing plates that you can check out, but we could maybe do a thrown plate. I don't have a, well, we'll see. Maybe I can do it. I've got clay. I could do a littler plate. All right. So when we're making low wide pieces, you need to start with a wider base, right? You have to start there. You can't start with a tiny little base and then think you're going to make this low wide piece. Caveat here, if you leave a lot of clay, like you're throwing 4 pounds of clay, and you leave a bunch of it down here, you can pull up and then flare out, but you have to leave a lot of clay to support it. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so I'm compressing the top a bit, supporting the sides. So what we're determining here is about how big our foot ring will be. That's what we have here. Now let's go ahead and open this up. And then pull outwards. You can make a flat-bottomed bowl if you want to, or if you make a rounded bottom bowl, that works too. Just keep in mind, if you're going to make a rounded bottom bowl, you're going to need more clay than a flat bottom bowl because you're going to have material to make that rounding from. So I didn't, really I would have wanted, I ended up with about 2 pounds of clay. Really I'd want about 3 to even start with a low bowl, but we're gonna make this work. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and compress. You know, if you end up with too thick of a foot, you see how I'm just compressing towards the center, and you just pick that stuff out. See, compress it towards the center, and that clay will kind of come up like a little tornado in there, and you just pop it off. We'll compress that. That's pretty close to where I want it. I can go in and finish it later. All right, now wipe out my, see how I put water in and then I wipe it out? I don't want too much water just sitting in there. And now as I pull up, I'm actually going to be pulling outwards with my finger here and upwards with my thumb, and my sponge on the outside is going to support it. So we're pulling out and up at the same time. And if you need more water, you can just use your sponge. And so we're pulling out. Now you're only going to be able to pull so far before your clay tries to collapse on you. And the more you pull, the more water you introduce, the more exhausted your clay is going to be, and the sooner it will collapse. So try not to use too much water, and try to be done in about 4 to 6 pulls, 4 to 6 shaping pulls. So I'm using my rib to help shape this. The rib's just floating on the outside. I don't know if you can see, it's not straight onto the clay, it's actually at the side angle to the clay. This is a very low bowl. And then I'm going to compress the rim, and then let's go ahead and shape it. Now the B-mix is a soft clay because it's a porcelainous clay, and you have to be very careful because every movement can really change your shape. And that's why I like the red ribs for this clay. But if I'm using a groggy or stoneware clay, the red ribs don't do that much. So you really need something like a wooden rib, or you could go with the yellow. But the yellow ribs can sometimes move the B-mix a little too much. So I'm compressing my bottom as I go in. Don't go too fast when you're making bowls. The risk is that you'll flatten it because you'll be throwing it out too much. It'll be too much pressure for it. Okay, I'm going to go in with my wooden rib. Oh, there it is. So they make a bowl rib. I've got one somewhere. And it's a really nice one to use. Actually, for this bowl, it would have probably been perfect, but I don't think I have it here. So we get a low, wide bowl. And I've made it a little wider than I should have. We'll see if I can keep it from collapsing on itself. No, we're good. We're still good. We're still good. All right, I'm gonna stop before I make a mess. I can feel it trying to give over here. So try not to go out too far past where your foot ring is, because if you do, what can happen is your walls will collapse on you. This is going to need a lot of trimming, but it's supposed to, because we had to make a great big thick foot, and I'll show you that in a minute. Oh, it's so thick. But it's supposed to be. So there's the undercut. So it's only the fourth time throwing since my surgery, I think. So I definitely got to get back on the wheel more. I've been so focused on hand building. So this is a very low bowl. To really do this right, you need to have about 5 pounds of clay, and you need to be willing to use about 2 pounds of that for your foot. So look how much is down there. But you need that because that is what's supporting the bowl. So that gives you a low, wide bowl. 2 pounds of clay. Let's see what we got. 2 pounds of clay has got us 7 3/4 wide and about 2 1/4 inches tall. Not very tall. And it will shrink again. So proportionally it'll be a low, wide bowl, but it'll be a little low, wide bowl. Now I got no place to put it. Balance it up there. What time are we at? It's time to do the giveaway. It's time to do the giveaway. Yeah. I see people loving the 3-way camera. Green is less flexible than the yellow, and the blue is the hardest. Yes. So the red is the softest, then yellow, then green, then blue in those colored ribs. And my favorite, I really love the red ones and the yellow. The green, I would rather use a wooden rib than a green, personally. You know, just the way I work. Are you very welcome, Barb? Yes, so talking about clay for bakeware, I use Laguna clays mostly because that's the manufacturer, that's what my supplier carries. And Laguna 90 and Laguna 60 are what I mostly use for bakeware. But honestly, folks, you can use any clay you want. Any clay that exists on the planet, you can use it for bakeware. Some clays are better than others, but that doesn't mean you can't use them. It's just, you know, your choice. You love the yellow. You love the yellow. I love the yellow too. So I think the thing I actually liked making the most tonight was this guy. And I haven't made a low, wide bowl in a few years. So yay me. All right, so we have a giveaway. We are giving away the 6-pack of Clayscapes glazes. So you'll all learn if you wheel throw. Put your hair back. If you don't, clay will hold your hair back for you. Many times I have clay all over me, in my hair, on my face. It's just how making pots is. And it gets you strange looks in the store. But I don't care. All right, so can you rescue a pot once it gets wobbly? Well, it depends how the wobble's happening, right? In a few broadcasts, you've seen me have a wobbly pot. If it's because the clay is too wet, you need to just stop and let it be. Once it's stiffened up a bit, you might be able to save it. Just set it to the side. If it's gotten uneven and too thin in areas, oftentimes you can't save it, but if it's at the top, sometimes you can just cut that off and you can go ahead and just make a smaller pot. That's usually the best way to go about it. All right, so all month long we're giving away Clayscapes Pottery glazes. Thank you, Clayscapes, for being our sponsor. They also have a discount code. It's EXPLORE10, where you can save 10% off on all kinds of products. You just go to their website and check it out, and you apply that code when you're checking out, and it'll deduct the 10% off. Now, you get to pick the 6 glazes you get, and you get to pick whether they are brush-on or dip-and-pour versions. Up to you. So Clayscapes makes a limited number of their dip-and-pour glazes as brushable. All of my glazes that they sell are brushable, so you can get them in that version. And yes, they have to mix up to the consistency of yogurt, so they're kind of thick, unlike the dip-and-pour where they're consistency of heavy cream. So there's a bit of a difference, and yes, everything has a food reference in my life. You even got loose hair wired in your clay. Yeah, about 2 pounds for the bowl. You feel good then. You tried a yarn bowl and ended up with a piece that was about. So for a yarn bowl, you're going to need more clay than, you need like 2 1/4 pounds for a yarn bowl, but it's a totally different shape than this. Yarn bowl is going to go higher. You're going to want to concentrate on going more vertical than out, and then add your volume out. And I have a yarn bowl tutorial. You might want to check out how to make one. All right, let's give this away. The winner of tonight's Pick 6, that means you get to pick a 6-pack yourself, of Clayscapes Pottery Glazes is Jennifer Mason. Jennifer Mason, congratulations. You get yourself a 6-pack of Clayscapes Pottery Glazes. And I've got some tutorials using Clayscapes glazes if you want to check that out. If you go to Clayscapes Facebook group. They have a lot of examples of their glazes. And Drew Seymour from Clayscapes Pottery is going to be joining us, I believe, on the 17th of November. I believe that's when he's joining us. And he's going to do a glazing tutorial. So that'll be really fun, and he can answer all your glaze questions, not just about how to glaze, but all about glaze in general. So that'll be really, really fun. And next week I will be back. I won't be wheel throwing next week. I'll be hand building or glazing. It'll depend on what you all tell me you want to see more of. I was thinking of hand building, since wheel throw this week, hand build next week, glaze the week after, you know, a little bit of everything, kind of rotated around. So congrats, Jennifer. We will email you and get you connected with the folks at Clayscapes so you can get your prize. Now, in prime time, we are going to be making closed forms. So that's where you throw forms and you actually close them in so they are hollow. What? Yes. And we're going to be making pumpkins. And I already have a class on hollow forms. If you checked out my Magic Shaker class, that is a hollow double-walled form. So it's a little more complicated, but very similar to what we're doing tonight. All right, everyone. I will catch you in prime time for my premium members. Everybody else, I'll see you next Wednesday. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.